You on that. Hello there. I'm Kyo Saronin Beatmaker. And welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. And on this episode, we're going to discuss that every US president is related to a elongated skull bloodline. Yes, indeed. This episode's going to get a little kinky. So strap yourselves in. So, before we get into it, I would like to preface this by saying that, there is always a bit of truth in legends. And you're going to see a little bit of that in this live stream. And honestly, you've seen it in previous live streams that I have done, whether it is the concave hollow earth theory or, what was it? The giants. There is a bit of truth in legend. And what I like about that phrase, and it's actually a quote from Star Wars. Shout out to Ahsoka Tano. What I like about that phrase is that it really can give you an idea of what to expect when you do little, dives into the, different religious practices, whether it's the occult, whether it's history, whatever it may be. You're going to find something that kind of sticks out and you're like, what is that? What's that all about? And the next thing you know, you're down this rabbit hole. Excuse me. And it's important to be mindful and self-aware when you go down these rabbit holes to, not get too high on the supply. And for this episode, needless to say, there's a lot of evidence to point to this being the case. And I did a previous live stream back when I had the internet of a caveman. And when I stumbled onto some of these articles, I was kind of blown away by it. So, sorry. Let me get a sip. I'll be honest, I have to get used to speaking for such prolonged time. I'm not used to that. So it's gonna be interesting to see this my vocal cords strengthen. But like I was saying, I've been trying to figure out where to start with this story. Now, I think what I'm going to start with is, I'll probably start with the elongated skulls, because in terms of the timeline of what we're going to be discussing about, it's more appropriate for me to come at this from the aspect of what are elongated skulls. Now, if you haven't heard of elongated skulls, it's going to sound a little wild to you, a little alien. That's pun intended. And you're going to actually find it pretty interesting. So, let's get into elongated skulls. Alrighty. Now, I like this site, Ancient Origins, ancientorigins.com, I believe. It's a nice site, solid articles, easy to read, good references. So, the story in this article is from, it was updated in December 19th, 2014. Now I chose this article. There were several, but this was the the best article. Hold on a second. I gotta check on my dog real quick. Have returned. Okay, sorry about that. Needed to check on Pablo. Yeah, so this is from 2014, but it's the best article to kind of get a little get our dip our toes into the whole world of elongated skulls. Okay. Alrighty. Oh my lord. Enough with the ads. Okay, I hope that's not playing, but we'll just deal with that. All right, Mark. Oh my lord. Mark Laplume, not even sure if I'm saying his last name right, is an artist and independent researcher who has been engaged in making reconstruction drawings of ancient people with elongated skulls. This cat up here, um, right there. I have already had the pleasure of showcasing his remarkable work in a gallery on fetus and children with elongated heads. Like I said, this is gonna get a little kinky. And in a post on visualization of ancient populations, Mark's reconstructions were also illustrated in an article on suppressed evidence challenging artificial cranial deformation paradigm as the only way of explaining elongated skulls. Mark now shares some of his insights into the mystery of elongated skulls with the researchers of ancient origins. Okay, Mark, how did you become interested in elongated skulls? Why did you decide to start reconstructing the appearance of these skulls? In 2016, when I first downloaded Google Earth, I looked around at places I knew and then made a beeline to the south end of Lake Titicaca. I was blown away by what I saw. The ruins of something vast uncovered every hilltop for miles in all directions. I knew something incredible had gone on there, but I put it out of my mind after finding no interest by anyone I tried to share it with. So this is what he saw on Google Earth. About 6 years later, I saw one of Brian Forrester's posts on elongated skulls. Now, a quick side note: Brian Forrester has been very at the forefront talking about and doing a lot of research on elongated skulls, and he was how I came to find out about elongated skulls. And when I was looking at this, I'm like, man, this is crazy. I didn't even know this was something that was even remotely possible. And what's kind of funny about it is that when you learn about him and you read up on him, it turns out he's not even like a medical doctor. He just like became hooked onto this, and he has been like at the forefront of really pushing the elongated skulls, doing a lot of research on it. He lives in Peru, where you can actually find a lot of museums, these small little side, roadside museums, and they have elongated skulls in them. They're everywhere. But let's get back to the article. About 6 years later, I saw one of Brian Forster's posts showing elongated skulls. I was lucky enough to reach him and talk a little bit about what I was looking at. Looking at the images of the skulls made me curious as to who these people were and how they looked. There were almost no interpretations of their appearance, and almost nothing about their history. My monetary sense of inclusion made me wonder what I could do to help him to advance our understanding of these people. Although I had not picked up a pencil in 14 years, I felt sure I could draw them to recreate their faces to see what they looked like. And those are the muses. The muses were speaking to our friend here. I'd quit art school but continued to pursue art in various ways for 18 years, culminating in working on large sculptural projects in the mid-90s, at which point I stopped drawing and making art. Yeah, the 90s was a rough time for everybody. Meanwhile, back to the skulls. I started doing online and archival research, collecting the images of elongated skulls and drawings. To date, I have done over 5,000 drawings and collected more than 8,000 photos of skulls, mummies, and related artifacts. While working with this incredible data and making drawings, the lack of understanding history and myth of what these people were and how they looked did not lend a sense of legitimacy to the attempt. There were so many unanswered questions, I wondered if perhaps this is why so few people could involve themselves with this kind of project. It's like a wall so big, you don't notice it or you don't want to admit it's there. Now, what you're seeing above is Brian Forrester holding one of the elongated skulls. Which, it's okay, and here is, I believe his name is Mark. Here are his drawings of what these people would have looked like. Now, put on your tinfoil hat for a little bit. And just imagine what these could possibly be. And what I mean by that is like, they talk about, and I'm not sure if they talk about it in this article, but there are ways of making the skull elongated. Like there were procedures that the people would do to actually make people's skulls elongated. But also during Brian Forrester's research and analyzing these skulls, there were some skulls of these people that were not they were natural, meaning they were born with the elongated skull as opposed to at being a child, their skull being pressured and forced into a design. Maybe I'll grab that article so you can see that interpretation of how they would copy that, the elongated skulls. But let's continue. Okay, so yeah, Mark's artistic interpretations of elongated skulls from Bolivia at the top and Paracas, Peru on the bottom. Yeah, and Paracas, Peru is where Brian Forrester lives and does a lot of his elongated skull research. Okay, Mark. When I began this study in 2011, the count of skulls was known to very few people who were actually aware of this. They estimated that there were a few hundreds of skulls, but through web searches, I found literally thousands of skulls. There are also about 1,000 skulls in Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Chile, which are not yet accessible to the public. Even more skulls remain unknown as they have not been photographed, or at least are not publicly accessible, and therefore not available for public viewing in Chile or Peru. Okay, look at these skulls. Now these are the interpretations of what these skulls look like. I I don't know. Could you imagine seeing someone like that? Like you're just kind of minding your own business and you pop around a corner and there's a person with an elongated skull. All right. And these are from a museum in Romania. Okay, so all right, I don't want to jump ahead, but you have to ask yourself, okay? Take a second and just take off your tinfoil hat, pop on your critical thinking hat, and ask yourself, okay? How is it that there are elongated skulls in Europe? Just take some time and ask yourself, how and why are there elongated skulls in Europe? Now, I don't want to jump the gun. I'm trying really hard not to jump the gun right now. But it's just like, you just ask yourself, like, how bizarre is that? And it said Romania, Bulgaria, Peru, Bolivia. You got to ask yourself, like, what does that mean? What what type of civilization was here, prior to us? And the reason why I say that is, you don't hear of, you don't hear about in the history books. I mean, I would take those history books with a grain of, with a large grain of salt, because let's be real here. Our history books are straight up propaganda and lies, but that's a story for another time. But essentially, what I'm saying is, that you have to really ask yourself, like, what is the real true history? Because the fact that there are, and what's even more funny about it, right? And this goes back to, like, whether it's about the mysterious rocket that landed on the moon back in 21, I think that was, or in 2018 or 2019, the guy who was skiing in upstate Buffalo, New York, and wound it up in California in 3 days. Yeah. There's these, why is it not, national news? Why is it not national news that there are elongated skulls in Europe? Why is it not national news that there's a pyramid in Greece? And this is what I mean. It's just, it kind of boggles my mind. But at the same time, it makes me not surprised, because why would they want such knowledge to be going out there? I mean, it would be kind of crazy if we were to find out that at one point in our history there were humans with naturally born elongated skulls that roamed the entire planet. You know, nobody talks about you know the Chinese and how there used to be Chinese that were black, but we'll touch on that in another live stream. I'm not going to get into that craziness right now, but it just makes you wonder. So here we go. Academic researchers are generally dismissive of elongated. Academic researchers are part of. They are another branch of the establishment of the military, industrial, corporate, pharmaceutical complex. They see them as nothing but artificially deformed human skulls, a result of deliberate head binding, yes, to achieve a flattened shape. And there's an article about that. Maybe we might look into that to give you the other side of the perspective on elongated skulls. In addition to this artificial head modification thesis, they sometimes also cite a medical problem called hydrocephalia. Why? Why do you think academics maintain this view? What is their evidence? Oh, that's a good point. I mean, I've never heard of this medical problem. Elongated skulls are never spoken about without terms of head binding. It's the hole in the bucket refrain from which there is no escape. But now there are also those, and I mean not only researchers, but obviously people who've woken up to the layers of lies we've been fed since the get-go. Many who look at the evidence of anomalies in the skulls are not satisfied with believing in the cranial modification dogma. People like Brian Forrester, Lord Pye, Graham Hancock, and not forget Michael Cremo, examine and record evidence rather than the stories made by earlier researchers, textbooks, and other gatekeepers of conventional perspectives. The point is to keep asking questions. And listen to Graham Hancock. He's got amazing books, Fingerprints of the Gods. He's the one that was pushing the Younger Dryas impact. They called him a fringe researcher, all of this, and then he turns out to be right about the Younger Dryas impact. Listen to Randall Carlson. But the thing with the elongated skulls, and I've watched videos, I've seen, Brian Forrester take these skulls to, actual medical examiners and within universities that specialize in bones and in skulls. And, a lot of them are coming back as being natural. Like they were, they came out looking like this. So, and I don't think there actually is a lot of archaeological evidence about the head binding. I know some did practice it, but I don't think it was as pronounced as the academic researchers are claiming it to be. All right. The verbal portrayal of binding is a collective projection. The reality is that 99% of those who speak about it have never examined an elongated skull firsthand. I don't know how it is so prevalent except that it is repeated all the time. The usual approach to elongated skulls is dominated by concepts, but the skull shapes are not linguistic. They are morphologic. My work has been an attempt at making a soft rebuttal by making public my process of looking at hand drawing, which involves seeing. And he makes a good point. You gotta be there. You gotta look at it. You gotta look at it with your own two eyes, rather than looking at it from a picture or a drawing or a reference or a description, I should say. Um, I don't rely on classical authorities. In my work, the skulls are doing the talking. Talking is a projection, while seeing is receiving. And and no one can answer questions which you alone can actually experience at a level of seeing. Good point. This is why my approach to elongated skulls is not conditioned by dogma. Elongated equals deformed. And good point. And also it's kind of like, they said earlier, I forgot how many thousands of skulls they have found, but are we going to then say that, you know, all of these people were deformed and they had, genetic, deformities or mutations? I mean, that's, especially if you've never looked at one or actually went into person. Neither have I, but I'm just saying, like, he makes a really good point. All right, and this is Mark's interpretation of the Detmo child, to the right here. Um, and this is a question to Mark. Are there any significant skulls that leave no doubt the artificial deformation paragram is wrong? How are these skulls different? Are there differences among elongated skulls themselves? Is it possible to group them according to shape and other features? To your first question, take a look at these skulls exhibit at an Inca museum in Peru. Okay. There are problems with the official story, which dates back to Hippocrates, defining Huns as having been bound. It claims that all skulls are merely artificially modified skulls of the modern-looking humans. The fact is, many had larger eyes as well as 25% larger brain case than modern humans. They also had higher ears, up to 1/2 an inch higher than normal. These are Paracas skulls next to human skulls. Look at that. Cranial structures are different. There are mysterious holes at the back of the skull, an extra plate above the occipital known as the Inca bone. And this is it right here. The Paracas skulls have variations in occipital bone compared to modern day human skulls. Okay. There is a problem with infants too, which have been found in Peru and the Andes with tooth set of a 3-year-old modern human child. Most parents will know that molar teeth in an infant-sized toddler is unheard of. Okay, yeah, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, wait a minute. How can a infant have Yeah, how can an infant have a 3-year-old human's mouth? Oh, that's bizarre. That's really bizarre. I wonder what that means. Okay, infant skull from Cusco, Peru, and infant skull from Tiwanaku, Bolivia. Okay. In South America, there are different categories or types. It does seem so, but I don't get into Spanish terminology. For me, it's just another way to separate from seeing the skull's individual characteristics. I tend to say that they that they had range, like the unexplained redhead that appears randomly in a family line. Yes. Similarly, the elongated skulls, the Huns, were wild in this way. They had a greater range, it seems, of morphological expression. And if I recall, in some of I might pull up Brian Forrester's Instagram page because he just has pictures of elongated skulls, and it made me think about two things. It made me think about a picture he posted on his Instagram of a person. This was a living person sitting at a computer, and they had a elongated skull. And he literally put, "Is this real or fake?" Like he put the question up because the photo, it's so hard to tell whether it's real or fake. And then it reminds me of a story that I heard. Do I want to tell that story right now? Yeah, I'll tell. No, I'll hold on to that. It'll come back to me. I'll hold on to that. Okay, and this is image of the different types of elongated skulls. Now, keep in mind, not all of these are infant skulls. Some of these look like they might be adults or even teenagers. In terms of the connections between the Americas and Eurasia, elongated skulls from these areas are so similar that sometimes the only way to distinguish them from one another is by the background or the patina on the skulls. Okay. Are you relying on any anthropological or forensic methods of facial reconstruction, or more generally, how do you visualize the appearance of these skulls? Organs come together to form the overall body of a head. Drawing the same skull from different directions tends to smooth out mistakes. The form arises in unison with these elements of bone, muscle, and skin. Mainly bones define much of a person's face, so accuracy, we would hope, is inevitable. How do you fund your research? What are your future plans? Let's see. Anything interesting? Because I have to keep in mind, this article is from 2014, so I'd rather make sure we hit the hot spots. Yeah, okay, that was it. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, and I've seen videos, and maybe I'll link one video in the, yeah, I'll link it in the description. It's a 24-minute long video, and it essentially, um, they do the DNA testing of some of the elongated skulls to find out, okay, where you're from, where you at, what's the origin. Okay, well, actually, one thing I can say is that in Peru, and I believe in Bolivia as well, they have also found elongated skulls with red hair. Which would mean the possibility of European descent. And they did talk about there being elongated skulls in Europe. So what I'm saying here, right, is a whole head binding thing. It's a little hard to agree with that theory, because if they're finding elongated skulls in Europe as well as in South America. Wait, is Peru in South America or in Central America? I can't think right now. about that. But if they're finding them in on two sides of the planet, I mean, it's kind of far fetched to say that, oh yeah, they're all practicing head binding, and then if that's the case, it'd be like, well, where did they get that knowledge from? If they're all doing that. So that's why I mean it's like, okay, then let's say that they're not um what's the word I'm thinking of? I see we got a visitor in the chat or in the live stream. Please hit the like button. Thank you for stopping by. Uh, you didn't miss too much. We're talking about elongated skulls and the connection to the U.S. president Bloodline. It's pretty interesting. But what I was trying to say is, like, if you're, these academic researchers, these mainstream researchers, if they're of the impression that these elongated skulls are of a form of head binding, then why is it that they're finding elongated skulls in Romania, Bulgaria, as well as in Peru, Bolivia, Chile? I mean, the notion of the head binding reaching the other side of the planet, it's a little far fetched. But it's also up to your interpretation. But me, if I'm putting on my critical thinking skills, I would push back and be like, yeah, he makes a good point. If they're also being found in Europe and also in South America and Central America, you can't say that it's this head binding practice, especially if they're finding elongated skulls in Peru and Bolivia with red hair. They still have hair on them. And when they've done the DNA analysis on those skulls, lo and behold, they find some genetic traces all the way into Europe. So it just begs the question. And it also kind of ties into, because we're actually going to be moving into the European side of the elongated skulls, which perfectly ties into what I was going to say is that I was watching a video, and I'm trying to remember which one, if it was about giants or it was about, I think it was about giants and elongated skulls, just a two and one essentially. And one of the researchers, he was talking about how he was speaking with someone who knew of some strange stuff going on in the Vatican. No surprise there. But he was essentially explaining to him that there are people who work at the Vatican with elongated skulls, and they work in the financial side of the Vatican and other aspects, which I found, very peculiar and interesting. And, perhaps if I pull up Brian Forster's Instagram page, I might be able to find that photo of that living person with the elongated skull sitting at a computer. So we live in a very we live in a bubble, and a bubble that's being curated for us, and they don't want us to know about certain aspects of our history. It's kind of funny how, like, not a lot of people know about the Smithsonian coming out and having to admit that they have destroyed giant bones and have them kept in storage that they have found all over North America. It's just all these funny things that you end up finding out about it, and then no one bats an eye, or even is like, wait, you're telling me that giants may have existed and the Smithsonian knew about it? It's like, yeah, I mean, literally, what was it, last year, Tucker Carlson pretty much told the entire world that the CIA pretty much, shot JFK. It's like, it's funny to me how, the truth is right there in front of us, or they admit it, and no one acknowledges it or bats an eye. It's fascinating to me. But I think it also just adds to the allure of this world that we're living in. Oh, hey, Bushido Mindset. Much love. Haven't seen you in a minute. I read about the elongated skulls a few years back. I often wonder just how much history has been erased due to the cycles of rulers. You know what? You are absolutely right. It's kind of like these in the World Economic Forum. They like to call them the Great Resets, and we have been in many different. They have like the fifth extinction, like the sixth extinction. They claim that we are in like the beginning of the sixth extinction, and you when you bring up how much history has been erased, you look at mud floods. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, Bushido Mindset, but when I first heard of mud floods, I'm like, what are mud floods? And then I started looking into it and started watching videos. And then I'm like, wait a minute. You're telling me that they have found entire trains perfectly preserved in mud? Or the fact that like there are videos showing, China experiencing massive mud floods, or California. These stories of massive, cataclysms that are just that wipe out a civilization, like the Younger Dryas impact. I mean, they've literally have found in archaeological sites throughout North America that there were people already living there. What was it, 200,000 years ago? There were people already living in North America, and I'm trying to remember the name. They had a scientific name for them, but I can't think of it right now. But if you look up the Younger Dryas impact, it all correlates to it. There's literally a Stonehenge. If you didn't know this, Bushido Mindset, there's a Stonehenge at the bottom of one of the lakes in Michigan. Yes, a Stonehenge. So you're absolutely right. How much history has been erased? I said at the beginning of the live stream, did you know that there's a pyramid in Greece? There's a pyramid in Indonesia. And the pyramid in Indonesia has one of the oldest gold coins ever found. And you want to know where that gold coin was produced, Bushido Mindset? It was produced in Turkey. How did a gold coin produced in Turkey make its way all the way to Indonesia? Just saying. Just saying. So, if you want to know about how, like, in terms of like the water erosion on like the Sphinx, Randall Carlson, he did a great podcast recently with Graham Hancock too as well. He was there talking about water erosion on the Sphinx, and how the Sphinx is actually much older than what Egyptian archaeologists are saying. It's actually 12,000 years older. You got thinking into these. Yeah, man. There's I'll put it in the description. I can't think of them right now, but there is 2 channels that I follow, and one of them, he literally has video footage of mud floods. He also has video footage and pictures of beyond the ice wall. But the concave hollow Earth theory. But that's a whole other crazy thing. But yeah, man, recently they found pillars off the coast of California, like Greek pillars hidden under mud. Go and research the orphan trains of Europe. Ask yourself why are there footage and images of Europe with these Gothic buildings and structures, and then all of a sudden it's gone, destroyed in mud floods. Do research on the world fairs, and how the world fairs had robots and animatronics. and I had it bookmarked because I thought it was crazy. These pictures of what looked like holographic projectors in the 1800s. And this all ties into the fact that our history is literally being erased, manipulated in real time. And there are, what is it that Graham Hancock says? He says we are a species with amnesia. So you're going to have to think about why is it that there are pyramids, underwater off the coast of Cuba? You don't hear anyone talking about that. Why are there pyramids in Antarctica? You don't hear anyone talking about that. Why is there a giant hole in the top of the North Pole that there are literally satellite images taken by NASA and Russia, and literally Admiral Byrd, who was a Navy pilot who flew into the planet. But I digress. There is evidence to all of that stuff. So yeah, Bushido, the real history. If we were to find out the real history, it is much, much more stranger than fiction, and it would completely upend the control that the military, industrial, corporate, pharmaceutical complex has over us. It would. How do you think the world would react if they were to find out that, back in the day, they used sound technology to levitate and manipulate and mold rocks? Ask yourself, why is it that the wall in Cusco looks similar to how the construction of the pyramid in Greece is? Oh yeah, they made the admiral keep quiet, but the man wrote a secret journal depicting his experiences and what he went through when he went inside the planet. I do plan on actually doing an entire several live streams reading up on his chapters. If you check out my concave hollow Earth theory live stream, that's kind of like the first introduction into the whole hollow Earth theory, which I will be honest with you, I'm more and more convinced of that. I'm not convinced on the flat Earth yet. I have not done any research into it, but I'm not sold on that yet. I'm still holding firm onto the hollow Earth theory, and I'm a little more convinced with the concave hollow Earth theory as well. But yeah, man, Bushido, it's just the what I like to say is that I like to call myself an essential realist. So I deal in the essential reality, and we have people who live and thrive in the false reality, and we live in a system that profits and promotes and propagandizes the false reality that they like to curate for us. So I'm completely against the false reality, and I completely aspire and promote and speak for the essential reality. But we're going to get into the European elongated skull connection and how that also ties into when we get into the presidents. I'm looking forward to that one. Okay. Alrighty. Oh, let me refresh this puppy. Why are you being foolish? Oh, because I'm not even clicking onto it. That's why. Here we go. Alrighty. It was updated in March 14th, 2018 by Alicia McDermott. All right. Geneticists, keyword there, geneticists, suggest long-skulled ladies were used as treaty brides in Europe. You heard that right. Okay, here we go. A group of 13 women stood out from the crowd in some southern Germany villages along the Danube River 1,500 years ago. Their DNA suggests they came from another region, and they were physically distinct from the norm in the area at the time. The most interesting feature was the women's skulls, elongated for some unknown purpose, which a German scientist thinks indicates a specific role the women were meant to play in the villages. Science Mag reports the tower-shaped skulls caught the attention of anthropologists and popular geneticist Joachim Brugger from Johannes Gutenberg University, Mainz, Germany. I am very impressed with myself right now. My Hooked on Phonics is killing it. So he and his colleagues decided to sequence the DNA from the remains to decipher some of the story. According to National Geographic, the presence of the elongated skulls has puzzled researchers for some time. Scholars Scholars known that skull modification took place among the Huns in South East Europe at the time, but it's an odd discovery made in Bavaria. Oh, look at that. Bizarre alien skull unearthed in Korea was naturally formed. Kinky. Alright, example of a modified skull, a practice assumed by the Hunnic that may have been appropriated by local farmers. Okay, see, this is the thing. They keep on going with this hypothesis, but they still haven't even found any evidence to suggest that this is what they actually did. So it's and you're telling me this was just adopted by local farmers? Put on your critical thinking hat here. You're telling me that local farmers 1500 years ago were able to find the time to learn how to do head binding? I find that really hard to believe. Okay, I'm being honest. I just use your critical thinking skills and let your gut tell you that doesn't make any sense. But hey, whatever. I'm telling you, the mainstream media, they just like to make things up as they go along. Okay, the two main hypotheses have been presented so far. The Huns or another intermediary group passed the ritual of head binding onto Bavaria women, or the skulls don't belong to the region they have been found. See, this is the thing. They keep on saying this practice, but there's no evidence to point that, oh yeah, they did this. They haven't found anything. They just keep on saying that. To find out more, an international team of researchers took tiny bone fragments from normal-shaped skull burials from 500 AD and elongated skull burials from alongside the regular graves. The DNA obtained from the human remains dates to the migration period spanning from late antiquity to the early Middle Ages. It was compared to modern populations throughout Europe and Asia. Results now show that the 23 individuals with regular skull shapes, 10 men and 13 women, mostly had genes for blonde hair and blue eyes and were most closely matched to modern populations in Northern and Central Europe. However, the DNA associated with the elongated skulls shows that they belong to 13 women who had genes of darker hair and eyes, and most similar to modern populations in southeastern Europe. Their DNA has been linked to modern people living in modern Bulgaria and Romania, as Buger states. Archaeologically, they are not that different from the rest of the population. Genetically, they are totally different. This is a young woman in traditional dress at a religious ceremony in Romania. Okay. I think they just picked her because she's got an oddly shaped head. That don't mean she has an elongated skull. All right. The paper on the discovery published in PNAS explains some of the significance of the results by stating this example of female bias migration indicates that complex demographic processes during the early medieval period may have contributed in unexpected way to shape modern European genetic landscape. But Buger's tentative explanation for the women's appearance in the village far from home is most interesting. He believes that the women with elongated skulls may have been sent to Bavaria to cement political alliances. The small numbers of the elongated skull women in each of the villages may indicate that they were in distinct political realms, where the women may have been seen as desirable for marriage with the village leaders due to their unconventional appearance. Buger admits that the foreigners may have caused some surprise in small villages. They are exotic women with exotic skulls coming to these boring foreign places. Culture clash. I guess. Elongated skulls have been a subject of curiosity. The biggest question people have is usually why ancient cultures around the world follow the practice of artificial cranial deformation. In many cases, scholars believe it was a deliberate ritual involving binding babies' heads to create a longer shape. Most researchers suggest the practice was used to set high status members of society apart from others. But there have also been examples of elongated skulls that are less easy to explain, such as the mummified head of a newborn baby with an elongated skull, or even examples of elongated skulls found in utero. What was I saying? What did I say? I was saying, like, this whole head binding theory, they have not presented any actual evidence to any actual head binding. I see we have another guest in the live stream. Please hit the like button if you would so kindly. Thank you for stopping by. We are talking about elongated skulls and the connection to the US bloodline. It is pretty wild. But this whole thing with the head binding, there's no actual evidence. And I've watched enough of Brian Forrester's videos. I follow him on YouTube. I follow him on Instagram. I've watched videos of them doing DNA analysis and doing research on these skulls. They don't ever find any archaeological evidence proving of the head binding. This is just the academics trying to explain away something that contradicts the narrative that they are pushing. It's no different than the pyramids. Are we really going to act like the pyramids were really built with elephants and slaves, manual labor, dragging massive tons of limestone that was in quarries that were hundreds of miles away from the building site of the pyramids? Okay. Yeah. Make it make sense. Please, make it make sense. And this is what I'm saying. It's like they're gonna say it's head binding, but like, where there's no evidence of it. There's more evidence to prove of these skulls having genetic links, the ones in Peru having genetic links to Eurasia, than there is of any evidence of actual head binding, procedural tools, I should say. But I wanted to click on something real quick before we keep moving on. I'm gonna go on here real quick, but like, it's just funny to me how quickly they will just brush things off and like make up these nonsensical reasons as to why it's like this, and I kind of laugh at it because I think it's a little insulting to people out there who are genuinely curious, and it's just funny to me how they're so hell bent on just mocking us, mocking us in front of our faces with ridiculous explanations. And then, like, if you try to push back on any of these, the ideas about how the pyramids were built, you're looked at as pseudoscience, or you're looked at as a freak, or whatever. It could cost you funding. That's another thing. That's a problem with the mainstream science, is that if you don't go along with their narrative, you don't get funding. You don't get to move up in the status. You don't get that possible, tenure. None of that stuff. And that's how they keep people. That's how they keep you in check. So I think after this article, I'm gonna pull up the article about the fetus elongated skull, because I think it adds a little pushback to the whole cranial skull narrative. because and I'm all about using your critical thinking skills here. I'm a big believer in using your critical thinking skills, and also being self-aware that we can't always necessarily trust what the mainstream voices are saying. I think the past 3 years have been a pretty clear indicator that you can't necessarily trust everything they say. And especially when it comes to our history. I think that is something that is extremely important. All right, so okay, we talked about the elongated skull found in the utero. I pulled that up, so after this article, we'll check out that. Okay. All right. Got helicopters above. Apologies for the sound. Painting by Paul Kane showing a Chuanoka child in the process of having its head flattened, and an adult after the process. I don't know. I'm still finding it a little hard to believe, but I will let you guys make that decision for yourselves. Regardless of the reason behind the cranial deformation of the woman who died in Bavaria, there is also debate firing up against them having been used as treaty brides. Israeli Herskovitz, an anthropologist, Israel, an anthropologist at Tel Aviv University in Israel who specializes in ancient human anatomy, is one of the contenders against Buerger's explanation. He told Science Mag, "This is one of the strangest things I've ever read. I don't buy it." Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Hersovitz's argument is twofold. First, he argues that it was unlikely that a number of women to have been sent out of their homeland at the same time simply to create political alliances. And second, he doubts that the skulls were intentionally elongated. According to Hersovitz, the skulls may have been accidentally altered when the women were babies strapping into their carrying packs or laid on hard wooden surfaces. Oh, God. You see, this is what I mean. Like, like even that doesn't make any sense. And this guy's an ancient. He specializes in ancient human anatomy. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But I digress. In defense, Buerger points out that no village had many women with elongated skulls, and it would be an extreme coincidence if all women with elongated skulls just so happened to also have a different ancestry from the rest of the population. So, I get it. And yep, that's it. So we're gonna jump over to the other article about the baby skull that was found in the uterus. That was an elongated skull. Now, see, that's where my idea comes in. That oh well, you see, the nose thing. Actually, what's interesting about the nose thing is there is a. It's so funny that you bring that up because I watched a video about that a long time ago. And I think it's during the time where they were changing from being like a poly religion to like having multiple gods to having one singular god. Spoiler alert, that's also where same idea of Christianity, Horus, Christ, but anyways. But yeah, there's a weird correlation with that, and I can't remember why, but they were saying that it ties into who that man was, and he was, let's just say he was a problem to the new narrative that was being built within Egypt. And that's what's interesting about, there was, at one time you had northern Egypt and you had southern Egypt, and, they were at war. I don't know too much about it, but I do remember that them bringing up that they're still not necessarily sure as to who he is, but they know that he just he pissed off the wrong people in terms of his rhetoric. From what I remember that they were explaining in the video. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so this article was updated in June 2021, and it's by Igor. Okay. Elongated skulls and utero, a farewell to the artificial cranial deformation paradigm. Elongated skulls are usually explained in terms of binding or artificial deformation. This paradigm emerged in the first half of the 19th century as a way of explaining unusual skulls discovered in Europe and South America, in places such as Crimea and Peru, respectively. The main idea behind the head binding paradigm is that all elongated skulls are a result of intentional modification of the form of the skull by applying external pressure. In other words, all elongated skulls are merely deformed normal skulls similar to those of modern humans. Okay, these were found in 1860. Challenging the paradigm. What evidence could challenge this paradigm? Right, the existence of fetuses with elongated skulls, i.e. evidence that such skulls already had an elongated shape in utero. Because the other notion is that the ones that look like they were artificially modified were that they were trying to emulate their gods and emulate the more royal aspects of that society, the upper class. And Brian Forrester talks about this, and he explains how there is evidence to that the ones where they were modified is that they were trying to emulate the high society. And that's where the whole idea of, you kind of wonder, like, well, why were there elongated skulls with red hair? And what's the meaning behind that? Because red hair is only, found in more of European cultures. So it starts pushing back it pushes back the mainstream narrative, because, and this is why, I look to other forms of researchers and scholars who aren't part of the mainstream media, because they tend to be more honest with their interpretations and research, and they don't just fall in line. They will push back. They will challenge ideas. And that's what you're supposed to do if you're a scientist or an archaeologist or researcher. You're supposed to challenge ideas, challenge, mainstream narratives. If there is a crack in that narrative, then go dive into that crack and see what you can find and emerge out with new information. So, challenging the paradigm. What evidence could challenge this paradigm? Right, the existence of fetuses with elongated skulls, evidence that such skulls already had an elongated shape in utero before any head binding was possible. Do we have such evidence? Yes, we do. Moreover, this evidence has been known to the academic community for over 163 years. I'm going to repeat that. This evidence has been known to academic community for over 163 years. So you still want to trust mainstream academia? You still want to trust them? When they knew the truth for over 160 years? Think about that. And that's what I mean, how they look at us as stupid. That's such an insult. Not only is that an insult to us, but such an insult to, researchers who were challenging, hey, you sure about this? This doesn't make any sense. And then the next thing you know, they're losing funding, or they're losing the opportunity to, progress in their field. And how ironic is it? Or no, how it's not even surprising. Look at what's recently happening with the Twitter files and Twitter coming out and saying, "Oh yeah, the government has a backdoor into Twitter, and they can pretty much nuke and throttle and shadow ban anyone they like and tell Twitter to do it." And most of us over here with our critical hats and our tinfoil gloves, we're like, yeah, no shit." So I just think it's funny. I really think it's funny. And of course they would know for over 163 years. Go watch my live stream when I talk about the Giants and the countless articles throughout the United States about farmers finding elongated skulls. I mean, finding giant skulls and finding them in Indian burial mounds when they were, excavating them and studying them, to finding them in caves, and some of the wild stories behind it. Peep that live stream. It's really interesting. And it talks about also the Smithsonian admitting to destroying and also hiding these bones. It's no surprise, and this is what I mean. You can't trust mainstream, academia. You can't really trust mainstream media. You can't really trust the federal government. It's already iffy to trust, state government if you, live in America. It's so apparent. Okay, so Rivero and Rivero and T. I'm not ready to butcher that one and embarrass myself. In Peruvian Antiquities, in 1851 Spanish and in 1853 English, argue that the protagonists of the artificial cranial deformation hypothesis are mistaken, since they had only considered the skulls of adults. In other words, the hypothesis fails to take into account the skulls of infants, and most importantly, fetuses which had similar elongated skull shapes. It is worth quoting Rivero and T in this. Okay, so here's their quote. "We ourselves have observed the same fact of the absence of signs of artificial pressure, and many mummies of children of tender age, who, although they had cloths about them, were yet without any vestige of appearance of pressure on the cranium. More still, the same formation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn. And of this truth we have had convincing proof in the sight of fetus enclosed in the womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman, which we found in a cave of Huche, 2 leagues from Tamar, and which is at this moment in our collection." So here's a fetus. So I think in the other article, they talked about a fetus of an elongated skull, but it had the mouth of a 3-year-old. It was an infant with the mouth of a 3-year-old. Now, if you look at this photo of this infant, you look at the side comparison. I mean, those are teeth. And this is what I was saying, when there's always a little bit of truth in legends. We have to really kind of wonder what does that really mean? It's so bizarre, but so fascinating at the exact same time. Okay, Professor Du Pont of great celebrity in the Department of Obstetrics, obstetrics has assured us that the fetus is one of 7 months age. Okay, it belongs, according to a very clearly defined formation of the cranium, to the tribe of the Huncas. We present the reader with a drawing of this conclusive and interesting proof, in opposition to the advocates of mechanical action as a sole and exclusive case of a phenomenological form of Peruvian race. Cranial, no negative connotation at the time. Okay. No negative connotation. Oh, okay, I see what they mean. All right. The same proof is to be found in another mummy which exists in the Museum of Lima under the direction of Don M. E. de Rivero. Um, so that's the fetus. Look at the teeth. I mean, those teeth that's a little bizarre. And then that's what it would look like with skin and meat. So you see, this child, this infant, was born with an elongated skull. Now, in the earlier of the live stream, in one of the other articles, they talked about how the ears were higher up. So it's you're. I mean, let's be honest here. We're looking at a species of human. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at a species of human. And this is one of those things I'm like, why is no one talking about this? Well, this should be, national news. But it's not. It's just so bizarre to me. Okay, the elongated skulls of infants. Elongated skulls of infants were available to European researchers as early as 1838. The skulls of ancient Peruvians were also in Samuel Morton's collection in Philadelphia. Oh, God. Two elongated infant skulls, which Rivero and T mentioned in Peruvian antiquities, were discovered and brought to England by Captain Blanky and presented to the Museum of Devon and Cromwell Natural History Society in 1838. Dr. Blemery provided a detailed description of these skulls in 1842, suggesting that they belonged to two infants, male and female, few months and about a year old respectively. He indicated substantial structural differences from those of normal infant skulls and the absence of the signs of artificial pressure, as well as their similarity to other Titicaca skulls in the Museum of College and Surgeons in London. Okay, so that pretty much kind of confirms the artificial pressure is not how this is happening. Because, think about it. Use your critical thinking skills. They're artificially squeezing an infant's head? Does that seem safe? No, that is not safe. That is crazy. So, I mean, think about how how dangerous it is, even when a doctor is taking a baby out of a woman. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. So it just adds to the evidence that these are natural. And the fact that they already knew about it in 1838, and they've been saying that it's binding. But then here we go in 1838, and they're like, oh no, this is natural. These are natural elongated skulls. And then also the fact that we go back up to here, and it already has teeth. And we read in the previous article that some of the infant skulls had teeth of a 3-year-old. And then you hear about, you go and you look up descriptions of giants, and they have 6 fingers and 6 toes and double rows of teeth. And there have been people out there who have been born with 6 fingers. And if you look into the Denisovans, which is all the way over in Siberia, I believe, the Denisovans were pretty much giants that mated with humans. It's all out there. This is what's so funny. It's like it's such an open secret. It's so out there, but it's either people don't want to believe it, or either they don't want to acknowledge it, or they don't care. And I can understand if you don't want to care. We all have enough going on in our own personal lives. We don't have time to be shouting at the rooftops that there used to be a species of humans with elongated skulls. I get it. It's not for everybody. So it's right there in front of us. Okay. The evidence of elongated skulls present in fetuses and children had led Rivero and T. Bellamy, Graves, and others to the hypothesis that these skulls belong to an extinct race of people. I'll repeat that again. A hypothesis that these skulls belonged to an extinct race of people who left their legacy on the populations who succeeded them as a practice of artificial cranial deformation. I discussed this hypothesis more and the detail in the looming collapse of the artificial cranium. So we could, if we wanted to delve into that. But that's where the whole idea is that the ones that they have discovered where they were natural, that means, and I was saying this, it's an extinct race of humans. Just like in, was it in Malaysia or Indonesia? They found over on that side of the world a cave, and it had bones of a humanoid species of people that were literally the size of hobbits. Like if you could imagine, the hobbits from like Lord of the Rings, they existed. They were a race of humans that were of that size. So that's why, when I was telling, Bushido about the mud floods and these great resets, yeah, they're another class of humans, maybe descendants of things from the Book of Enoch. Well, yeah, I mean that's the whole. Look at the Anunnaki. Okay, I'm gonna blow your mind right now. Okay, Elohim, Jehovah, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus. It's right there. The Elohim, like literally every race, every religion, all of their main deities, it's all from the one syntax. All right, if you go onto the YouTube channel, The Fifth Kind, they literally have a 3-part series explaining Elohim and explaining how every single religion is all connected, and it was created by 2 dudes. Okay, Enki and Enlil, they're Anunnaki in Sumeria. It's right there. And whether or not you humor that or believe in that, the fact is there were other races of humans living on this planet. And whatever happened, and you look at when, was it Homer, Socrates, Herodotus? I don't remember which one of those cats. He went to go hang out with the Egyptian priests, and they asked him, "Hey, how was your story of creation?" And he tells them theirs, and he's like, and they're like, "Oh, cool. That's like 1 of 6." So there have been multiple resets on this planet. And there was a civilization that was alive during the Ice Age. Spoiler alert. Why is it that there's a Permiski map and it literally has the coast of Antarctica and it has palm trees, it has animals, and that map was made in the 1300s, somewhere around there. Why is it that Antarctica now is frozen? But that gets into another rabbit hole that we're not going to get into right now with the whole Ice Age thing. We're not going to get into that right now, and how the planet normally is actually cold. But I digress. But if you don't want to believe that there are aliens, fine. If you don't want to believe that there are aliens, if you don't want to believe that there are interdimensional beings, fine. But you're going to have to at least humor and acknowledge the possibility that there were other different species of human living on this planet. I mean, and what's funny about it to me is how there is so much evidence about that. Literally go look up Brian Forster, go read his books, go to his YouTube channel. He literally has videos where they're like, okay, we just got the DNA back from the Paracas skull. Oh, look, it's got some European descent in it. Where? Why is that? Oh, that would explain the red hair, huh? So it's all there in front of you. Like, look at the pyramids. Why is it that the oh, and I did a live stream about that, and check that one out about the pyramids. Why is it that the pyramid in there's a pyramid in China? I mean, yeah, there's pyramids in China. Spoiler alert, if you didn't know that. Pyramids in and there's a pyramid in Greece. There's a pyramid in Indonesia. There's pyramids in India. There's pyramids in Mexico. There's a pyramid in Alaska. Spoiler alert, it's underground, but yes, there's also a pyramid in Alaska. So, and there's also, I believe, one in Ireland. Yeah, well, that also gets tied into the whole fact that the Egyptians knew about North America. Spoiler alert, too. The Egyptians knew about North America. How the F did they know about that? This is what I'm talking about, Bushido. Like, we really don't. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, you can believe it. Too much has been covered up to be downplayed. Yes, exactly. So so much has been covered up. You would be foolish to not be surprised that, oh, hey, giants were also real. Oh, hey, there may have been another race of humans that lived on Earth that were elongated. It's like, and I don't, and I don't mean to speak mean, but it's like you're being arrogant for the sake of being arrogant. And I get it. Arrogance is bliss, but it gets to the point where it's just so in your face. You're being foolish to just not even acknowledge it, or to even humor the discussion or the idea. All right. Okay, here we go. The question now is how it happened that the cranial deformation paradigm became so prevalent. The answer to a large extent consists in the authority of Morton's expert opinion and his extensive collection of skulls, which is now located at the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. And oh, just so you guys know, the Smithsonian is just a branch of the U.S. government. It's not separate from the U.S. government. Just so you know. So if you wonder why, the Smithsonian, even though they have acknowledged and confirmed that they have giant bones in their vaults, you can also ask yourself why they're not displaying them. Because the government is a big no-no on that. Just like the government doesn't want you knowing that there were Aborigine Americans, and I mean dark-skinned people, for those who don't understand what I mean by Aborigine Americans, that lived in Virginia, and lived in North and South Carolina, But I digress. The question now is how it happened that the cranial deformation paradigm became so prevalent. The answer is to a large extent consists in the authority of Morton's expert opinion and his extensive collection of skulls, which is now located in yada yada yada. We read that already. His influence was significant enough at the time to close the debate on elongated skulls for the next century and a half until independent researchers, and I would like to mention Robert Connolly, who popularized elongated skulls in the mid-1990s, and Brian Forrester in particular started to raise questions about the validity of the cranial deformation hypothesis by locating and showing elongated skulls to the public interested in finding out the true story of human origins. Cranial features of ancient Peruvians. In Crania Americana, Morton offered a description. There's literally a magazine on skulls. That is hilarious. There's a magazine, man. There is a magazine subscription for everything. That is hilarious. Morton offered a description of a peculiar elongated skulls which differed from the elongated skulls produced in various artificial means. He suggested that the territory of Peru and Bolivia was previously inhabited by a race of ancient Peruvians. I have been so fortunate to have the examination in my own and other collections of nearly 100 Peruvian crania, and the result is that Peru appears to have been at different times populated by two nations of differently formed crania. one of which is perhaps extinct or at least exists only as a blended by adventurous circumstances. I like the way they put that. In various remote and scattered tribes of the present Indian race. Of those two families, that which was ascendant to the appearance of the Incas is designated as ancient Peruvian, of which the remains have hitherto been found only in Peru and especially in that division of now called Bolivia. Yeah, now this is that video interview with Brian Forrester. Did I put this? I'll make sure to put this link in the description as well if you guys are interested in learning more about the skulls and the genetics. It's really, really interesting stuff. Although ancient Peruvians had naturally elongated skulls, Morton concluded that they further tried to articulate this feature by head binding. This is an interesting observation in itself, since it raises the question why a race with naturally elongated skulls would aspire to further elongate them. Perhaps they were also perceived by a race whose skulls were even more elongated. See what I'm saying here? About, we think about it, right? We, even in our own society, we try to aspire to look like people. Whether it's celebrities, athletes, whoever, we are constantly trying to aspire to be like them. And it's no surprise that even if in a society of people with elongated skulls, it would be no surprise that there may have potentially even be another sect within this elongated skull community that had even bigger skulls, which then kind of makes you wonder, like, what's going on here? Like, what's really going on here? All right. And this skull is from 1857. Whoa. Subsequently, Morton changed his opinion and started to consider all elongated skulls an exclusive result of head binding. However, in light of Rivero and T's fetuses with elongated skulls, as well as hundreds of infant and child elongated skulls, which are now available to researchers, it is necessary to open the debate about ancient Peruvians and their counterparts in other parts of the world. Accordingly, it is necessary to revisit Morton's original encounter with elongated skulls. This is how he originally described cranial features of ancient Peruvians. The head is small, greatly elongated, narrow, its whole length, with a very retreating forehead and possessing more symmetry than is usual in skulls of the American race. The face projects, the upper jaw is thrust forward, and the teeth are inclined outward. The orbits of the eyes are large and round, and the nasal bones salient. The zygomatic arches expanded, and there is a remarkable simplicity to the structures that connect the bones of the cranium. Interesting. Look at that. Man. Given that there are at least 2 mummies containing fetuses with elongated skulls, in addition to hundreds of infant and children with elongated crania, a priority task for the academic community would be to identify the physical location of the mummies and proceed with DNA analysis, which is currently done by independent researchers and enthusiasts who lack infrastructural and financial resources and face significant obstacles in obtaining necessary permissions. It is worth noting that the deal with very old DNA, the analysis of which is complex and an expensive procedure. So this was updated, in June 1st, 2021. So I know that if you go to Brian Forrester's YouTube channel, he has plenty of videos providing updates on the skulls and like I was saying, you know, even on his channel, he even has pictures of them with red hair. Let me see if I can pull it up. But it's just so fascinating to wonder, like, what is really going on in our world. Like, it just keeps on getting, every day it just keeps on getting stranger and stranger. And not only that, you know, when you start doing your own research, and that's like really the best way to do it is, when you do your own research, you're able to better, utilize your time and your critical thinking skills more efficiently, rather as opposed to allowing other people to think for you. Because when you allow other people to think for you, you're not really, utilizing your individuality and your freedom of thought, for what its purpose. And I know that right now we're living in a climate, in a society where, using your critical thinking skills, is taboo, and it's considered you know it's considered heresy. But I don't believe that. I'm really a strong proponent in, like, doing your own research, and really just taking time to look at stuff and just ask questions. I know nowadays we're living in a time where, if you ask any questions, you're liable to get in trouble. But how else are we supposed to, learn about ourselves, learn about our identity, and learn about what we aspire to be, what we hear, what we put up with. And for me, when I see all of this information, when I learn about this stuff, it makes me glad that, I didn't drink too much of the Kool-Aid. And I think, we've all drank, and when I mean by drink the Kool-Aid, it's kind of like, believing in, it's just wholeheartedly not using your critical thinking skills, not using your individual thought, and just believing that being mainstream. I guess that's the only way I can put it. And I'm blessed also that, I had a mom that raised me to, to question, and to seek out and to be adventurous with the knowledge and my interests. And not everyone is fortunate to have that, so I don't take it lightly. And that's why, I enjoy having these discussions and talking about it, because I think it's important. And you never know, you might find out some stuff you never knew and get into it. So this is Brian Forrester's Instagram page. It took me a minute to find it because I kept on spelling his name with an A and not an I. But it happens. But he also, what you're seeing here is megalithic temples in Malta. No, I don't want to see this. I want to see. Wait, is this all he's got? He used to have, 8,000 posts. Let me. Oh, I gotta sign in. Ugh. Ugh. I don't feel like signing it. To be honest, I don't even remember what my login code is. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull up a certain image of his that he had that I really liked. If I can't, then we'll just move on to the presidents. But I'm gonna see if I can find that photo of that living person with the elongated skull. It just, I don't know how much any of you guys are out there are like really into ancient history and like ancient societies, but it's so fascinating. Um, oh, I forgot. There was head binding that was done in Africa as well. I'm looking at photos of that right now. So far, I can't find it. I don't think I'll be able to find it because that was like years ago. But I think next time what I'll do is I'll log in and maybe I'll do a live stream where we just scroll through his Instagram page because he has so many incredible photos and videos, and honestly it would just be fun to like look at his things and just talk about it. So I think I might save that for a day. But we'll jump into the presidents. Now, the whole thing with the been on the journey of questioning everything for the last 3 years. I was aware, but not as much as now. Hey, man, I feel you on that. I'm glad that I was able to. Glad we were able to find each other. That you were able to find my channel and be able to provide and share with information that you haven't heard of. I think it's like I was saying, Bashida Mindset. It's just even for me over the past 3 years, it's incredible all the new information and revelations that have been uncovered. So I'm right there with you, man. Like my mom recently got me some books about our nationality and origins because I heard some rumblings that my nationality and origins might be descended in North America, and I'm from the Caribbean. So you got to take it, try to wrap your brain around that. Like how the hell did you start in North America and end up in the Caribbean? I'm trying to figure that out myself. But so when we're gonna get into the presidents now, and it's this is really interesting. So the in Europe, because we're going to start with Europe because it connects to United States. Because I mean, as much as the United States likes to say that it's its own country, it technically is still a colony of Imperial England, or I should say, the Bank of England. It's a corporation. So in Europe, they are able to trace all of the royalty down from one lineage. And when I went down this rabbit hole, I don't even remember how I got down this rabbit hole. Um, but when I delved into it, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Now, this blog site's a little wacky, so I'm gonna be like jumping around a little bit because, like I said, it really is a wacky website. So I will be jumping around a little bit. Let me pull. Oh, that's not the right thing. Okay. So, because I wanted to start with this one first because it kind of gives you a little bit of what I want. All right. Very interesting, though. Okay, so we're gonna start in this little section right here. Um, a movie above majestic in 2018. Whatever that means. Okay, well, hold on. Anyways, listening. Oh, very interesting. Yeah, listen, looking. Okay. Um, King George I, elongated skulls in Denmark. All right. David Wilcock is saying this in the 50-minute marker in this movie, above Majestic. King George I, who began ruling in 1714, was a direct bloodline descendant of these people who obviously had the elongated skulls in the 1400s. And then you find out that a variety of earlier British consorts, meaning nobility, were also direct descendants of the uh, Edesta clan. Then it gets even more outrageous when you discover that the royal families of Norway, Sweden, Spain, and Denmark are all descendants of the same elongated skull, the Esta clan. Did Macron strike a deal with Danish PM by sending it to France to PR? Okay, well, that's nonsense. But okay. Um, where are we going? Where are we going? Where are we going? Okay, now this picture right here. This is the 1400s. The Italian noble de Esta family clearly displays these physiological features in various depictions, such as paintings of Pisanello. This becomes far more interesting once we realize the majority of European royal bloodlines have direct genetic ties to the Esta clan. So that's that part. Now we're going to jump into the other article, or blog, I should say, called Exposing the Cabal. Now this article also talks about some stuff about the Las Vegas shooting, but we're not getting into that. If that's something you want to dive into, you can check out the link. It's in the description. Okay, so this is part two: exposing the cabal. A brief review of the cabal. The cabal apparently dates back to before the Roman Empire. They are vastly wealthy and believe in segregating their own bloodlines from everyone else's. They once ruled openly as Egyptian pharaohs, the Mesoamerican priesthoods, and the various royal bloodlines in Europe and Asia. One key characteristic that many of them have is psychopathy. This means they have a fearless dominance to seek power and have no conscience about hurting others. This type of disorder can be intentionally inflicted upon someone through severe, prolonged abuse, particularly if it is sexual in nature. Torture research going back to well before the Spanish Inquisition has proven that any human being can be broken after enough repeated trauma. Look at MK Ultra and mind control. This actually does change how their brains function in most basic ways. We make physiological modifications as a survival and coping mechanism. Though they see their behavior as a sign that they are more highly evolved, medical research shows the frontal lobes in the brain of psychopaths are nearly deactivated. Okay, and the frontal lobe is like empathy and all that. So that's a normal person. That's a psychopath. Could you imagine, like, you're going for like a brain scan? Isn't entire life you think you're a good person. They show you a brain scan. It turns out you're a psychopath. Oh man, that would be quite the plot twist. All right. Okay, that's a normal brain on your left, and then that's a murderer on the right. Okay, imagine you're going into the hospital for a brain scan. You're thinking you're a good person this entire time. They show you a brain scan. It turns out you're a murderer. Oh man. This means an entire part of I just kind of, it just clicks in my head. How does this have to tie into the president's bloodline? But then again, we have to remember that if you want to get involved in politics, you kind of have to be a little bit of a sociopath. So I think we're still on track. This means that an entire part of the neurophysiological that is built to feel empathy, compassion, and concern for others is simply not functioning. It is also possible to have a harmful overabundance of neurological activity in the frontal lobes. Instead of just manifesting as extremely sensitive and highly caring people, it will often create clinical OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay. So it's a normal brain, and that's a compulsive person. Okay. The slice here is taken at a different angle. Hence, the normal control does not look the same as in the previous images. Since the frontal lobes are the parts of the brain that process emotions, OCD leads to constant feelings of anxiety and hypervigilance. I can imagine that the people who run the World Economic Forum probably all have OCD. These people get caught up in obsessive, looping thought patterns that are emotionally based, tossing around the same things over and over again. Okay, the US government. These obsessions are often traceable to unhealed trauma from how others treated them. They may fall into seemingly bizarre, repetitive behavioral patterns that often provide relief against the constant sense of anxiety they feel. Okay. There are many different types of obsessions these sufferers can fall into, including compulsive hoarding. Psychologists can usually trace the onset of these behaviors to one of the series of very intense traumas that alter the person's neurochemistry, and that ties into, like I was saying about MK Ultra, mind control. Jolly West, the guy who did that started that over here. I recently learned about Jordan Peterson and his ties to MK Ultra. I'm planning on doing a live stream about that. Okay, this is a problem we all must face. The psychopath is not affected by fear, punishment, shame, or the opinions of others or society as a whole, including morals and ethics. They have an enormous sense of personal value and grandiosity, and can modify their personalities to present exactly what people will respond to the most. Politicians. They will often be master manipulators, and they go to great lengths to be as physically and socially attractive as possible. Tell that to Carl Schwab. In the beginning, you will feel as if you have never been more in love, or at least you feel you have found one of the most fascinating people on earth. Okay. Oh, you're subtly being groomed. Okay, we're gonna move through this a little bit. There's a yin yang compensation. Okay, this is getting very sciencey, but I don't mind sciencey, but it's not getting to what I was hoping it would talk about. Here we go. Yeah, okay. Think about okay, here we go. This is a good part to start it. Okay. Personal chances affect the collective. I do believe that as we cut the cords of individual level, we will see more and more examples of freedom breaking through the global level. The meditation effect I have written about in each of my books shows that consciousness is a holographic as a worldwide scale. I agree with that. And I think that's also kind of like it ties into what I mean by like listening to mainstream academia, mainstream media. They create the narrative. They create the fear. They create the hopes. And it's all not in our best interests. And that's why it's kind of like it ties in with the president. Like, you got to be a sociopath if you want to be in with any of these groups. I mean, if you think any of these people who in the World Economic Forum, Davos, Bilderberg, BlackRock, whatever, If you think any of those people are like, good people, have your best intentions, they don't. I mean, look at our own government. Look at what's going on in Australia, what their government is doing to their own people. So, as it's all possible, and I believe that when you have a unified positive energy, and there's studies that do that, you can see a dramatic change in people. So let's see what else where we got here. And it ties in because, like, if you look into the stories of like Inky and Inlo, I'm trying to remember which one of the brothers was the sociopath. But one of the brothers, he wanted to teach humanity. He wanted them to grow and evolve and be their own people. And the other brother, he wanted to wipe them all out. And when that did not become planned, he decided to use the human race to further, these occult practices of like in Mesoamerica with the child sacrificing, all that kind of stuff. So, we have the yin and yang, the good and evil, and within the cabal, there is that sense. And it's kind of interesting how it's all like, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it's a uniparty. Here in America, if you live here in this area in America, it's all a uniparty. And same with the cabals. And I think it's interesting how, and the reason why I picked this article, I actually did not do my homework and actually read it. But when I saw it had parts about the elongated skulls, I was like, okay, it's connecting to that story. So we'll jump into that part of it here. As I argue in the Ascension Mysteries, the Cabal members believe themselves to be descendants of human-looking extraterrestrials with elongated skulls. All right, this is the part I was looking for. These skulls have been found all over the world and are definitely the remains of some alternative form of human being from what we normally see. This was confirmed with DNA tests ordered by Brian Forrester in 2014 showing mutations unknown in any human primate or animal known so far. And that is in regards to the DNA testing of the elongated skulls. The skulls themselves have obvious abnormalities including completely different cranial structures, alternative passageways for nerve fibers and blood vessels. There is no plausible skeptical explanation that can account for widespread presence of these remains worldwide. We already covered that. Obviously, the visible Cabal members do not display any structural abnormalities in their skulls. Interbreeding has long since obscured such a difference. And if you know anything about, the royal bloodline in the UK, that's a one big inbreeding family, However, as recently as the 1400s, the Italian noble d'Este family clearly displayed these physiological features in various depictions, such as the paintings of Pasanello, as you're seeing right here in front of you. Now, if you remember earlier, when we were looking at the skulls and looking at the drawings, the ears were higher up, just like in these photos. All right, this becomes far more interesting once we realize that a majority of European royal bloodlines have direct genetic tie to the d'Este clan. Furthermore, as of 2012, we found out all American presidents, except 8 Van Buren, were direct descendants of King John of England, who signed the Magna Carta in 1215. And this is what I mean, how it was all gonna kind of tie into one another, how it all ties in. So, in fact, you can genetically analyze the contestants of each election at least up to 2016, and whoever has more of this royal blood will be the winner. Okay. Think about that. Yikes. Yikes indeed. I'm telling you, Bushido mindset. It keeps on getting wilder and wilder the more you uncover. Man. And we're going to read the article about the presidents. That article is hilarious. Okay, far from being a statistical fluke, this is one of the multiple pieces of evidence that U.S. presidents have been part of these hidden bloodlines. Also, i.e., the occults. In fact, you can genetically analyze the contestants. Oh yeah, we read that part. Okay, all right. French Merovingian era aristocrat's skull has elongated shape. In 2013, it was also announced that an elongated skull was found in the tomb of a French noblewoman dating back to the Merovingian era. Okay, there we go, Merovingian. Oof. The Merovingian bloodline is supposedly descended from Mary Magdalene, at least in the Cabbal's own tradition as revealed in the Da Vinci Code. Interesting. This was automatically written off as a case of head binding, but it is acknowledged that multiple skulls like this have been found throughout Europe. We already know about that. Let's see. Oh, okay. Hold on. We're gonna do this. Okay. A medical name for this is. Oh yeah, we talked about that. The elongated skull has been formed to that. Yeah, to that disease. Skulls without was the elongated skull shape has been referred to as a I don't know. Oof, I've been at this for we're almost getting to 3 hours. I'm sorry, guys. Skulls without as much length are referred to as oh, good lord. Dolichos, okay, I got that one, is Greek for elongated, and Ceph means skull. Brach means short in Greek. Okay, the French anthropologist Georges Vacar de Laponge was very likely working on behalf of the Cabal when he wrote the racist treatise, The Aryan, His Social Role in 1899. Ah, okay. So it says Lepaul believed people with elongated skulls were superior. He wrote in another book in 1899, The Aryan, His Social Role, in which he opposed the Aryan races to the by okay, interesting. Oh, okay, I get what they're saying now. And intended to delineate types of man, each destined to one end, in order to prevent any competition to labor conditions. His anthropology thus aimed at preventing social conflict by establishing a fixed hierarchical social order. Leponge had a direct influence on Nazi racial and eugenic doctrine. The Nazi concept of the Aryan master race was derived from Leponge's writings extolling the virtues of people with elongated skulls. Interesting. Many people only think of it in the typical terms of blood, hair, and blue eyes, but the elongated skull aspect is a central significance as well. Okay, you cannot explain this away by head binding. Yeah, we talked about that. What is this? All right, this is from 2009. What happened to the hominids who may have been smarter than us? Two neuroscientists say that a now extinct race of humans had big eyes, childlike faces, and an average intelligence of around 150, making them geniuses among Homo sapiens. What does that sound like? I'll let you guys use your critical thinking skills on that one. This is a sculpture of Nefertiti's daughter. So that is very curious. Very, very curious. Okay. Discover magazine did not say this was caused by head binding. Oh, see? Right there. They very clearly had absolutely declared that this was an alternative human species which was significantly more intelligent. The only deficiency in their scholarship compared to what insiders have told us is that a small number of these people still do live on Earth. They are very secretive and keep to themselves. Their exact number is unknown, but there could be as many as 10 to 25,000. Interesting. The number is purely speculative. It is possible that there are even fewer of them than that here on the planet. Or inside the planet too. There are many more who believe that they have a traceable genetic link to this forgotten race. This is the true nature of the Cabal. Peterson revealed that the Jesuits claim that they have medical proof that they are comprised of 25% alien DNA. Interesting. So, I'm just scrolling through here. I think are we the cast landed. Okay, this guy starts going off on other things. The Atlantis gene. What is this? Okay. Interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and reread this. Got some interesting things in here. But okay. So I wanted to read a little bit of that because it ties into this. Yeah, it is interesting. It is interesting. I was not expecting all of that. I'm pleasantly surprised. But we and they bring it up about the connection to the U.S. presidents, and like I was saying, it's like if what was it, King? Which king was it? Yeah, all American presidents have a direct descendant to King John of England, who signed the Magna Carta in 1215, and if that means that he is also a descendant of the De Este clan in Italy. So, to wrap this all up, we're going to talk about how this ties into the... Okay, we did do that. To the president as well. So, we're going to read this article. And unfortunately, and I'll get to one interesting part about this article that's very interesting. But here we go. This is from 2012. Okay, 12-year-old girl discovers that all but one U.S. president are directly related to each other. In 2009, a 12-year-old girl stumbled onto an incredible genealogical connection. Every American president but Martin Van Buren shares a common ancestor. Brigianne de Avdigon. Why has everyone got these fancy-ass names? Then a 7th grader from Salnias, California, began studying ancestral lineage as part of her summer project inspired by her grandfather's 60-year-long dedication to studying presidential genealogy. With plenty of help from her 80-year-old man, it's a little disrespectful, but okay, Brigianne learned the process of tracing ancestry on her own line. Once comfortable searching through countless records and certificates, the young girl started looking into the background of several presidents. Soon, she noticed an odd coincidence. Each president seemed to be related to John Lackland Plantagenet, perhaps best known as Robin Hood's enemy, King John. The prodigious royal even signed the Magna Carta in 1215. sorry, I just remembered I gotta charge my phone. Okay. Apologies. Here we go. Okay, phone, settle down. All right. It took an estimated 500,000 documents and many months of arduous work, but Bridget had finally solved the historical mystery. Although genealogists had previously genetically linked 22 of the presidents, they hadn't been able to find a common ancestor for the majority of the men. Bridget published her results in an infographic titled "We Are All Related," which is still for sale 5 years later. In fact, the chart even made it into the Library of Congress exhibit on Magna Carta earlier this year. She told Good Times Weekly, "I think it would be nice to pass the chart along from generation to generation and keep it alive, so they can know about this information and spread this information. It's important to know about your culture, where you're from, and where your leaders are from." I agree. Well said. Perhaps most important for the budding genealogist, Bridget discovered she's actually the 18th cousin of Barack Obama. At the time of discovery, she even wrote him a letter to let him know. The Walt Disney Company is officially... What? Is this part of it? No, what the heck? That is weird. Why did the article do that? Let me refresh this real quick. Because I know there's more to this. Hold on a second. I don't know why it's acting like that. Let me pull this up real quick to check on this. Let's see this. Interesting. There was more to it. I could have sworn there was more to this article. Let me see if I could pull up.
Come to TurboTax. And
oh God. I'm trying to see if I could find the photo of the young girl. Can't find it. But she's a white girl. She's a tiny little white girl. I remember seeing a photo of her. Oh, actually, here. You know, I'll pull up this video. This is her. I'll pull up this video. It's only 2 minutes long. I'll pull it up. Give me one quick second.
Hi everyone, Mark Barden here.
tonight the story of a seventh grader from Salinas who claims to have made a major discovery about President Obama. She and her grandfather say that President Obama is related to all but one U.S. president. We get more tonight from Action News reporter Felix Cortez, who's live in our Salinas newsroom.
Well, Dan, the youngster spent the summer, really all summer, tracing the family tree of our presidents. Her conclusion that all the presidents, with the exception of one, share the same grandfather.
Well, first we start off with George Washington at the top, and then it goes to John Adams, Thomas Jefferson.
11-year-old Bridget Dovigneau says she's made a first-of-its-kind discovery that President Obama and all the presidents before him, with the exception of one, are related and descendants of a former king of England.
No, they are all cousins, and they're grandsons of John Lackland.
Dovigneau says she spent countless hours on the internet over the summer researching the lineage of our presidents, a project that started with her trying to trace her own family tree.
But I'm the first historian to do all the presidents. I'm very glad I got this done, and I think it will turn out to be a success.
The Monte Vista Christian seventh grader has written President Obama to tell him the presidents before him are his cousins. She hopes to present this family tree chart personally to the president. But Bridget has her skeptics, including this reporter. Her biggest supporter and firm believer that Obama is a descendant of a former king of England is no doubt her mother.
If you have a child, and they 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 have a child,
Like names change.
all she's saying is this guy is the great, 25th, 27th, depending on what line it is. He created all this family. So do I believe it? Yes. It's hard, but it's true.
Well, Mom said it. Hard to believe, but you got to give the little girl an A+ for at least trying to do that and trying to accomplish that feat. And by the way, Bridget has concluded she's the 11th cousin of President Obama. Dan, Aaron.
All right, very good. Thank you, Felix. So who is the one that President Barack Obama is not related to, according to the seventh grader? Martin Van Buren, 8th President of the United States, first U.S. president born in the U.S. Van Buren was a widowed farmer and tavern keeper from New York who helped form the Democratic Party. He served one term as president. His ancestry is Dutch, and according to the Salinas seventh grader, all of the other presidents are of English ancestry.
Okay, can you hear me now? I think I accidentally turned off. Can you hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me now. I think I fixed it. Where's my... Let me see. I apologize. I did not realize that you couldn't hear me. I am so sorry. Just my logo and no sound. Oh, that's weird. Oh, all good now? Okay. Okay, I think, yeah, I figured out what the issue was. Well, while I was essentially muted for a moment there, self-muted, I pretty much was saying how I find it really interesting that with all the presidents being essentially, essentially blood related, it's like, okay, so are any of the elections necessarily like, are the elections pre-planned? You get what I mean by that? Because it's just weird if all of the presidents are related, and it made me wonder. Okay, well, what about the candidates that don't win? Are they also related to King John? I find that really interesting. But it also kind of ties into this whole thing about the elites, whether it's Hollywood, them all being connected. You know, Ellen DeGeneres related to Bill Gates. You know, it's just really fascinating when we see all of this. So I just King John, I find that really, it's such a bizarre world that we're living in now. Truly is. And look at that. 2 hours and 25 minutes. This has been good. I'm really proud of this. Whew. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. Please hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. And feel free to share this live stream with anyone who might feel interested in going down this interesting rabbit hole. And I really appreciate Bushido Mindset for stopping by and hanging out with me during this time. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. And I'm glad that we were able to find each other. I'm glad that you enjoy the content. And I'm glad that I was able to share some new information for you that you didn't know about. And hey, man, I highly recommend, look up those mud floods. Look up the orphan trains. You're going to find the orphan train story really, really bizarre. There's so much to be uncovered. And if you want to know more about like the pyramids and like the and where Atlantis could actually be, which is in this place called the Rekok structure in Africa. Bright Insight, great channel to check out on YouTube. I highly recommend it. Yes, man, much love. Thank you so much, Bushido. I really appreciate you coming by, and I hope you have a wonderful week. I'm not sure when I'll be streaming again. Maybe Friday, maybe over the weekend. Most likely over the weekend for sure. But I'm going to work on some videos, and I got some schoolwork to take care of. But we're going to keep it pushing. I really appreciate it, man. And stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.